after my wife took care of her sick crush. My lawyer wife, who had been secretly married to me for 3 years, finally remembered that today was our wedding anniversary. But when she rushed home, all she found was a divorce agreement. And what she never could have imagined was that the person handling it turned out to be her own colleague. When she stormed over to question that colleague, asking why she hadn't been informed beforehand, the reply left her utterly speechless. I didn't know Mr. Wang was your husband. Haven't you always said you were single? Chapter 1. Hello. I'd like to file for divorce. This was our 3rd year of marriage, and I had made my decision. I was going to end it, but I hadn't told her yet. Sitting in the law firm, I spoke softly to the lawyer across from me. He looked up at me, his tone calm but polite. If you wish to divorce, both parties must sign a divorce agreement. And after the 1-month cooling-off period, it will be finalized. Is your wife not here today? I was silent for a few seconds before replying. I'll make sure she signs it. All right then, I'll draft the divorce agreement for you first. It didn't take long for the lawyer to prepare the document. But that short span of time felt like an eternity. When I finally received the printed agreement, my heart sank a little deeper. Leaving the elevator, I walked downstairs with my head lowered, my mind replaying every moment of our marriage, each detail like a thorn pressed into memory. Once she signed this, it would all be over. But just then, I heard a voice so familiar that it pierced right through me. George, what are you doing here at the law firm? I froze and looked up. There she was, Willow, her almond-shaped eyes sharp enough to see through anyone. My heart skipped a beat, completely unprepared. She was a lawyer, and I had come to divorce, at her law firm. The irony couldn't have been greater. Fortunately, she didn't notice anything. After all, she's never really cared about me in the first place. Suppressing the tightness in my chest, I tried to sound calm. Just here for a consultation. By the way, the property transfer documents for the house Dad and Mom mentioned are ready. You just need to sign them. I flipped the divorce agreement to the last page, placed it on the reception desk, and handed her a pen. The final page only had a signature line. Willow, being a lawyer, frowned slightly, her professional instinct urging her to glance through the content. But before she could, someone stepped out of the elevator, and her attention immediately shifted to him. Just like before, her eyes softened when she looked at him, while I became invisible. She hesitated only for a moment, then signed her name hastily. All done. If there's nothing else, I have work to do. I nodded, feeling the weight in my chest finally lift a little. She hadn't realized what she'd just signed, that it was a divorce agreement. If she'd taken even a second to read it, she could have exposed me, but she didn't care enough to notice. Her entire focus was on the man who had just walked in, Makoto. I looked at his handsome, composed face, then back at the gentle light in her eyes, a mixture of emotions twisting inside me. My hands clenched around the papers until they crumpled. Without another word, I turned and left the firm. As the glass doors slid shut behind me, I faintly heard her tell her assistant, a new client, asking about divorce consultation. Her tone was calm, detached, only softening when she turned to say, Makoto, give me a few minutes. Then I'll take you to lunch. Okay. I glanced down at the document in my hand, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. Yes. I was here to consult about divorce, but not to ask, to finalize. Just 1 month. Once the cooling-off period passed, she'd be free, and we would truly be over. Willow and I, we were secretly married. Other than our parents, no one knew we were married. Even her crush didn't know. The idea of keeping our marriage secret, that was hers. I didn't hesitate. In fact, I agreed almost too quickly. Even in that moment, I knew she had never truly loved me. We were college classmates. From the very first day of school, I fell for her at first sight. She was the campus beauty, calm, composed, and brilliant. Unfortunately, she was never warm toward me. I chased her for 4 years, and all I ever got in return was distance and polite courtesy. Still, I never felt regret, because she had never said yes to anyone. I hadn't lost to another man. She just didn't want to love anyone. Or maybe, more precisely, she was born incapable of loving men. That was the lie I told myself for years. After graduation, we went our separate ways. She went to graduate school. I started working. From then on, our paths never crossed again. I thought my feelings for her would fade with time, but fate played its cruel joke. 3 years later, at a blind date arranged by our families, I saw her again. She was sitting there, cold and elegant as ever. Just one look from her, and my heart skipped the same unsteady beat. Do you want to get married? She asked. Straightforward and emotionless. I was caught off guard, but secretly thrilled. She must have been pressured by her family, I thought. Still, how could I refuse, when the woman I'd loved for years was suddenly willing to marry me? And so, we got married. I thought I'd stumbled upon a miracle, a gift from heaven, but in truth, I was just the man she used to run away from her past. It took me a while to realize. She wasn't uninterested in men, she simply already had someone in her heart. That person was her best friend's younger brother, Makoto. She was 5 years older than him. She always said she saw him as a little brother, but I could tell. That careful restraint of hers wasn't the affection of a sister. She had loved him for a long, long time, but the moment he graduated, he married his girlfriend of 3 years, and she was heartbroken, under her parents' pressure. And in the wake of that heartbreak, she chose me, in haste, without love. The night I discovered the truth, I drank myself senseless. I thought I'd give up on her, and for a while, I really did keep my distance, but only a few days later, I caved in again. I told myself, there's still time, if I just love her enough. One day, she'll see me. So I worked harder, at my job, and at our home. I tried to close the distance between us, to make her used to me, but she always kept me at arm's length. Even after 3 years of marriage, I still couldn't find a place in her heart, and for the first time, I started to wonder if my persistence had ever meant anything at all, until that day, when I accidentally found her photo album, a record of one boy's growth, from age 6 to 25, every photo, every caption, perfectly organized. It wasn't the first time I'd seen her meticulous side, but this time, her carefulness carried something deeper: emotion, obsession, attachment, and I couldn't pretend not to care, especially that night, the night she drank. She almost never touched alcohol, but that night, she was completely drunk, smiling with a kind of childlike joy that I hadn't seen in years. I asked her what had happened. She only smiled, said nothing. Later, I found out Makoto had divorced. In that moment, I understood. The window to her heart had never been open for me. I was nothing more than her refuge, a stand-in to help her escape her pain. But now that the man she once loved was free again, I laughed at myself for being such a fool. That's when I made my decision to end this marriage that had never truly begun. When she signed the divorce papers, I felt a strange kind of relief. She hadn't even looked at the document carefully. Her eyes focused entirely on Makoto, who had suddenly shown up at the firm. I didn't blame her. It was my choice. My greed for something that never belonged to me. Back at the home we had shared for 3 years, I stood in the middle of the living room, a space I had decorated myself, and memories came flooding in, each one painted with her silhouette. My gaze eventually fell on our wedding photo. Her smile, so forced, so distant, looked almost cruel under the light. I took the frame down and tossed it straight into the garbage bin downstairs. Then I returned, quietly sorting through our property files, determined to end this farce once and for all. When she came home, the first thing she noticed was the empty spot on the wall. She frowned, a rare expression for her, and asked hesitantly, "Where's the wedding photo?" "The nail came loose," I said flatly. I took it down before it fell on someone. Willow didn't question me further. She placed the late-night meal beside me and went into the study. The sharp, spicy scent filled the room, and I froze, opening the bag. I saw the red, fiery dishes inside. My throat burned just looking at them. My chest tightened with something sour. We had been married for 3 years, and because of my chronic stomach illness, I had always eaten bland food, but my wife never knew. If it were the old me, I would have forced myself to eat every bite, just to make her happy. But the man I was now picked up the bag, walked downstairs, and threw it away. From today on, I will throw away every grievance, every sadness, and every part of this marriage, including her. Chapter 2. It was already deep into the night, yet I kept tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. I buried my head into the pillow, my thoughts tangled into chaos. Just then, a cool hand suddenly wrapped around my waist, moving faintly against my back, familiar, lingering, slowly sliding forward with that recognizable scent. Her breath brushed the back of my ear, familiar, yet it made me instinctively shift away, dodging the kiss that was about to land. Her movements paused for a moment, then she spoke softly, not in a good mood. I kept my eyes closed and lied casually. "My stomach hurts. I just want to rest." She didn't press further, just a gentle mm. Then she nestled quietly into my arms. I thought she had fallen asleep. Unexpectedly, her voice came again. "That property contract you mentioned earlier, can I take a look? I'm worried there might be loopholes." My eyes snapped open, my heartbeat quickening as if something had struck me. She really wanted to see it. Panic surged, but I couldn't refuse. "You really want to see it?" She looked up at me, a flicker of confusion in her eyes, but still nodded. I stayed silent for a while. Finally, I got up and went to the study, pulling out that so-called property agreement. In truth, it was our divorce agreement. Just as I was walking back to the bedroom with the document, ready to hand it to her. Her phone suddenly rang. Willow, Maria's drunk again and causing trouble outside, you need to come. The man's voice on the other end was frantic and rushed. I heard every word clearly. Her face changed instantly. While answering the call, she was already throwing on her coat. Watching her swift movements, I couldn't help but speak up. Again, is it your brother who's getting divorced causing trouble this time? She froze mid-step and turned to glance at me. Her tone grew more serious than usual, as if trying to keep me from overthinking. It's his ex-wife. She's drunk and waving a knife at his door. I have to bring the bodyguards and check it out. It'll be a mess if something happens. I said nothing more, only nodded slightly. Be careful. She left the room in a hurry. The moment the door closed, it felt like all strength drained out of me. I sank back onto the bed. That night, I didn't sleep at all. When dawn began to break, I picked up my phone to check the time, and accidentally swiped open my WeChat moments. At the top was a new video posted 2 days ago by Makoto, someone I had secretly added. In the clip, the red sun slowly rose between the mountains, flooding the world with golden light. People gasped in awe, cheered, and when the camera panned across the crowd, I saw her, Willow. She stood among them, her face bathed in the gentle glow of morning, her lips curved in a smile that relaxed, long-lost smile. Yesterday's darkness has ended. Everything will be reborn. The video ended on that sentence. I stared blankly at the screen, my chest tightening as if punched, a dull, suffocating ache with nowhere to go. He, Makoto, was divorced now. With her help. How could it not happen? Willow was always decisive and capable. He was the one she had loved for years. As long as he needed her, she would give everything without hesitation. She was never meant to be mine. Now that the right person had returned to being single, I was nothing more than a transitional chapter during her emotional vacuum. She wouldn't need to say it, I could already picture it clearly. Her gentle voice telling me she wanted to end our marriage and start anew, and I would nod, as she wished. A bitter smile crept onto my lips. I put the phone face down on the nightstand. My mind replayed the way she had signed her name at the bottom of that agreement earlier in the day, without a second of hesitation. So this is what true letting go feels like, effortless, almost serene. She hadn't even looked twice, not realizing, or perhaps not caring, that it wasn't a property contract at all, but our divorce agreement. I had already made the decision for her. Rather than waiting for the day she spoke first, it was better for me to end it myself. Taking the initiative to let go, at least that would leave me a little dignity. Rather than being forced into an embarrassing silence, I put my phone down and stood up, beginning to pack away all the couple's items we'd once bought together, the matching keychains, mugs, toothbrush cups, pajamas. Things I once couldn't bear to throw away with even a glance, I now placed into the box one by one, without a trace of hesitation. When the box was full, I carried it downstairs. It was heavy, dragging on my fingers until they tingled with numbness. Just as I reached the bottom of the stairs, I happened to run into her returning home. She immediately noticed my strained expression and came over quickly. Why are you throwing out so many things? I lowered my head and replied flatly, we never use them anymore. Might as well toss them, they're just taking up space. She nodded lightly, not pressing the issue, and even bent down to help me lift the box. I stood there, watching her take those so-called useless things from my hands, and at the same time, take away the last trace of my silent test. Her figure soon disappeared into the distance, walking away with the same clean decisiveness that defined her. I wasn't surprised. After all, she only needed to open that cardboard box to understand what I meant to do. Just one look at the things inside, the gifts she gave me, the keepsakes I had treasured, the items we bought together, the small tokens exchanged on special days, and she would know this wasn't just about decluttering. Someone as sharp as her should easily read my intention. I was preparing to leave. There was still room for the story to change. If she had said a word, turned back once, even hesitated for a second, but she didn't. She didn't even open that box. I watched her silhouette fade completely from sight, and all the ripples in my heart went still. Then, I turned around and threw the box into the trash bin downstairs. Along with it, I sealed away the last trace of possibility. No lingering affection, and none worth lingering for. Chapter 3. That afternoon, my computer suddenly froze, with a pile of documents still waiting to be organized. I had no choice but to step into Willow's study and ask to borrow her laptop. She didn't say much, simply handed it to me. I sat down, plugged in my hard drive, and as I waited for the files to transfer, a pop-up message appeared on her screen. Without thinking, I clicked on it. Willow, the firm's dinner tonight, are you bringing your boyfriend? My fingers froze midair, trembling instinctively. 3 years. We'd been married for 3 years, yet she had never once told anyone about it. In everyone else's eyes, she was the law firm's cold, beautiful star attorney, single, admired by countless people, and because of that single image, I had been able to visit her firm a few days ago to consult about a divorce without anyone suspecting a thing. Would she bring me with her this time? I didn't know, and I didn't dare hope. While I was still staring blankly at the message, Willow looked up from her work, glancing at me as if trying to read my reaction. I immediately snapped out of it and forced a calm smile. So, are you taking me to the dinner party? My tone was light, almost teasing, like a joke, but only I knew how much quiet hurt was buried beneath the question. It was really just a disguised plea. We've been married 3 years, when will you acknowledge me as your husband? She opened her mouth but said nothing. That brief silence cut deeper than any word could. I looked away, forcing a more relaxed smile, pretending it didn't matter. I've got something to do tonight anyway. Even if you wanted to take me, I probably wouldn't have the time. She exhaled in relief, visibly eased. Then, next time, I'll bring you next time. I didn't answer. I rested my hand against my forehead, hiding my eyes in the shadow, and in my mind, I quietly replied to her promise. Willow, there won't be a next time. That night, I didn't go out. I stayed home packing, occasionally glancing at my phone, until I saw her new post on WeChat Moments. A photo from the dinner party. Her smile was polite, distant, perfectly composed. Standing beside her was Makoto. I stared at that man's profile for a long time, then suddenly found it absurdly funny. So she had chosen him, after all. I thought she might hesitate, struggle, maybe restrain herself a little, but she hadn't. I couldn't blame her. It was my own foolishness, believing that 3 years of marriage could earn a sliver of affection, a bit of weight in her heart. Around 10 that night, I received a call from Lawyer Mao at her firm. He said he had an urgent matter and asked me, since I was nearby, to come downstairs and pick up a file for him. I agreed and drove over, but as soon as I arrived at the entrance, I saw her. She stood under the streetlight, squinting slightly, holding that very document I was supposed to deliver to Lawyer Mao. Her face was a mixture of anger, disbelief, and something else, something complicated and hard to name. Divorce property settlement agreement. George, what is this supposed to mean? I paused, quickly regaining composure before replying calmly. It's David's. He's been dealing with a divorce lately, asked me for advice, so I arranged for Lawyer Mao to handle it. I met her gaze squarely, every word smooth and steady, as if the lie had been waiting there all along. She didn't say a word, just stared at me, as if she could see straight through every layer of calm I'd built around myself. Her brows furrowed as she lifted the document, clearly intending to open it and see for herself. But before she could, a hand suddenly reached out from behind her and gently wrapped around her arm. Willow, weren't you supposed to meet a client? Why have you been gone so long? Makoto's familiar voice, as he leaned closer to her, his tone soft and natural. I saw Willow stiffen. She froze for a brief second, caught completely off guard. Her fingers tightened around the file. Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't look at me, didn't dare to, and she didn't know what to say. But more than that, she didn't want to push him away. Not now. Not when he was the one reaching for her. I, on the other hand, was calmer than she could have imagined. Taking 2 slow steps forward, I reached out and retrieved the agreement from her hands. Then I gave a small, polite bow, my tone distant, almost formal. Thank you, Attorney Liu. My friend and I still have some divorce matters to handle. I won't keep you any longer. My voice was even, no tremor, no accusation, no trace of emotion. Just the kind of composure that comes when everything inside has already gone silent. Chapter 4. The night wind rushed in through the half-open car window, scattering my thoughts into a mess. I didn't bother to close it. The cold air poured straight into my chest, chilling me to the bone, but at least it kept me awake. That scene, Makoto standing beside Willow, kept replaying in my head like a thorn that refused to come out. She smiled at him, and he leaned slightly to block the splash of wine from the nearby crowd. They looked, fitting together, perfect, even. I didn't even feel heartbroken anymore. Maybe I'd already gone numb, worn down by her indifference. Time after time, all that remained was exhaustion. 30 days of the so-called cooling-off period. It turned out to be so long, long enough to make me realize that cooling off was really just a graceful excuse for goodbye. I rubbed my eyes, the corners stinging, and didn't notice the car ahead suddenly reversing illegally. A deafening bang exploded in my ears. The collision slammed me forward violently. The airbag burst open with a sharp hiss, and my mind went completely blank for a second. When I came to, the searing pain in my leg almost made me scream. I looked down. The deformed car door had crushed my lower leg. Blood seeped down my pant leg, soaking into the seat. The pain was unbearable, but I had to stay calm. With trembling fingers, I fished my phone out of my pocket and dialed the emergency number. The ambulance arrived soon after. The doctor checked me over and said the injury wasn't fatal, but surgery was necessary, cleaning and suturing the wound, and it required a signature from a close family member. Can you contact any relatives? The doctor asked. I nodded and started calling Willow Liu. Once, twice, Again and again. More than 10 calls. Not a single one answered. I stared at the glowing screen, those rows of missed call notifications blinking like mockery. What was she doing? The firm's dinner party must have just ended. She was probably still with her friends, her colleagues, and him, the men she had once cared about for so many years, drinking, laughing, talking about dreams and life. Of course she didn't have time to answer. Sir, the nurse asked tentatively, your wife really can't come? I shook my head, my tone oddly calm. We're already divorced. Only a few days left before it's finalized. The nurse froze, clearly taken aback. But you're still in the cooling off period, right? Technically, you're still married. Can't she at least come sign the papers? I didn't respond right away, just smiled faintly, a bitter smile. 3 years of marriage, not that long. Really, but I remember every moment I humbled myself for her, waiting alone at the dinner table until midnight, hoping she'd come home for a meal, forcing myself to study 2 whole volumes of the Civil Code just to share a world, only to have her dismiss me with, you're not a professional, don't talk nonsense, planning surprises, buying gifts, trying to earn even one genuine smile, and she'd say she was too tired, had no energy for that. Everything I thought was effort, to her, was just unnecessary noise. In 3 years, she hadn't once slowed down for me, not even for a day. I used to believe that even if I didn't say it, she might still care, just a little, but now she wouldn't even pick up the phone. A wife who can't be reached when her husband's in a car accident, I murmured, my voice light, detached, as if telling someone else's story. What difference does it make if she comes or not? The nurse sighed, eyes filled with pity. Then, call a friend, at least. Chapter 5. These past few days, it was David who stayed at the hospital taking care of me. I didn't expect Willow to come, but on the 4th day, she showed up at the door to my ward. When I saw her, something inside me trembled a little. Not surprise, more like a kind of indescribable fatigue. Her gaze fell to the bandages around my ankle, and confusion flickered across her face. You were in a car accident. Why didn't you tell me? I almost said, I did, that the 10+ missed calls were all from me, but when the words reached my throat, I just smiled faintly and swallowed them back. You were busy, I said softly. Didn't want to bother you over something minor. She went silent for a few seconds. Maybe she actually felt guilty, because she lowered her head, voice quieter. George, that day with Makoto, it was just a coincidence. Don't read too much into it. I looked at her with a faint smile, but there was no emotion left in my chest. Has his divorce process finished? She froze for a moment, then nodded. Yes, it's done. They're officially divorced. I gave a light chuckle. Congratulations then. I hope mine goes just as smoothly. She blinked, clearly not catching the real meaning behind my words. Before she could say anything more, her phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID, hesitated, and then stood up to answer it in the hallway. Only when she left did I finally feel like I could breathe properly again. For 3 whole years, when had I not watched my words and measured my tone around her? Even when I felt hurt, wronged, or heartbroken, all that ever came out of my mouth was, it's fine. After she stepped out, I answered a call from David. We were talking about how 15 days remained in the cooling off period when, click, the door opened. Cooling off period? Who's getting divorced? I instinctively looked up and met her shocked eyes. I hadn't expected her to come back, hadn't expected her to overhear. Luckily, David happened to arrive at that very moment. I forced down the panic clawing at my chest, pointed at him, and said evenly, he is. David blinked, confused at first, but quick enough to catch on. Yes. Me. I'm the one getting divorced. The process is already underway. Willow didn't know him well enough to question it, but she still frowned. Why didn't you come to me first if you wanted a divorce? David faltered, searching for words. I hurried to cover for him. You were busy handling Makoto's divorce case. I didn't want to disturb you. Just as I expected, the mention of Makoto made her flinch. She quickly changed the subject. Well, if you need help later, you can always come to me. I said nothing. She wasn't stupid. If she'd cared even a little, just enough to notice the details, she would have seen through the cracks long ago. But the moment something involved Makoto, it was like someone pulled the plug on her logic and awareness. And at last, I understood what people meant when they said love makes you blind. Watching her type rapidly on her phone, restless and distracted, I silently began to count down in my head. 10, 9, 8. When I reached 1, she stood up, just as I knew she would, and came up with an excuse. The firm needs me. I have to go for a bit. What day are you getting discharged? I'll come pick you up. I nodded lightly, already knowing she wouldn't. The day after tomorrow. She left. I waited all day and night, but the door to my room never opened again. When I finally picked up my phone and opened WeChat Moments, it was exactly what I expected. Makoto's new post, bright blue sky, rolling waves, a beach photo. He was smiling, relaxed, carefree, and she was probably there with him. I called her. Before she even answered, I already heard the faint sound of the ocean through the line. "George," she said, her tone brisk. "I'm out of town on a business trip. What's wrong?" She'd forgotten today was the day I was discharged. Of course, he was always the important one, and I was just the umbrella she pulled out when she felt lonely, temporary shelter from her storms. But I was done. I didn't confront her, didn't remind her. I just asked, like I always did, calm and polite, "When did you go? How long will you be gone?" "Left 2 days ago. I'll be back tomorrow." "I see," I murmured. "Take care of yourself." Chapter 6. After hanging up the phone, I called a car myself. Standing at the hospital entrance, I took out my phone and opened the calendar. 10 days left. 10 more days, and I'd be free. This 3-year dream, this illusion of love, would finally end. So what if she didn't come to pick me up? At least I'd learned something. Never again should I lose sleep over someone who would never turn around for me. When I got back home, I'd planned to move out right away, to end this relationship that looked like a marriage but had long become a hollow shell. But with my legs still injured and my movements slow, I couldn't do everything myself, so I called a moving company to come pack things up. Boxes piled up across the living room as the workers moved busily back and forth, doors wide open. I sat quietly on the sofa, watching the home I'd once arranged with such care being dismantled piece by piece, like attending the funeral of something I'd already lost. Then I heard the familiar click of high heels from outside the door. She was back. Willow stood in the doorway, looking as composed as ever, only frowning slightly when she saw the mess in the living room. "What's going on? A moving company?" I stood up, my voice steady and detached. "The Swan Apartment's ready. It's close to your firm. You can move there, more convenient for you." She seemed to remember the property agreement and nodded, slipping off her shoes before sitting on the sofa, as if picturing the layout of that apartment. "You liked gardening, right? The east-facing balcony gets good sunlight. You should keep it for your plants." I lowered my gaze, not meeting her eyes. My tone was light, casual, almost indifferent. "No need. I've stopped growing flowers." Of course, it wasn't that easy to stop, but those flowers had been for her. Now, they no longer had a reason to bloom. She glanced at the lilies on the coffee table, fresh ones. She didn't know I'd replaced them that morning, because I still remembered she liked them. Then she asked, "Why are all these my things? Where are yours?" "Already moved," I replied without hesitation. She didn't seem suspicious, probably assumed I'd sent my things ahead to the new home. She poured herself a glass of water and reminded the movers not to mix up the labels on the boxes. I said nothing, only looked at her quietly. There was no chance of confusion. That new home contained only her belongings. Mine had no place there. I had no intention of inserting myself into her life again. Once everything was packed, she naturally reached out to help me downstairs. But the moment the elevator doors opened, before I could take a single step, they appeared, Makoto and his younger sister. We all froze. For a few seconds, the air itself seemed to stop moving. Willow instinctively released my arm and stepped forward, positioning herself between me and them. That reaction, whether instinct or reflex, spoke volumes. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Makoto smiled and said he came to give her a surprise. He explained that Susan wanted to see the new house, and since he hadn't been there either, he asked her parents for the address and came over. I didn't move, didn't even glance at him again, just let out a soft, inward laugh. Surprise? Yeah, quite a surprise for me, too. He looked at me, squinting as if trying to remember where he'd seen me before. He had, of course, at the law firm, at the bar. He stared and asked, "Willow, who's this gentleman?" She hesitated. I saw it clearly, that flicker of hesitation in her eyes, the calculation. Was I a friend, a client, or someone not worth explaining? I didn't want to see her struggle, didn't want to humiliate myself either. So I stepped forward, offered my hand, and smiled politely. "George, Lou's old college classmate. I'm going through a divorce right now. Came to ask an old friend for some help. Didn't expect to walk in while she was moving. Bad timing." That line snapped Willow out of her daze. She looked at me first with guilt, then quickly followed my lead, introducing everyone as if nothing were amiss. Everything appeared ordinary, calm, even, but I could see a flicker of doubt in Makoto's eyes. Still, with so many people around, he didn't press. Instead, he urged his sister to help the movers. Then he came over to me, smiling casually. "So, George, why are you getting divorced?" I hadn't expected him to be so blunt. I froze for a second, then gave him a small, weary smile. "My wife," I said quietly, "fell in love with someone else." Chapter 7. Hearing that I had gone through something similar, Makoto immediately felt a surge of sympathy and couldn't help but comfort me. "I'm pretty much the same, but it's okay. Once you're divorced, everything will start getting better. Willow will definitely help you get through this." Yes, the hardest part, signing the papers, she had indeed helped with that. I nodded and followed up on his words. I heard your case was also handled entirely by her. She must have put a lot of effort into it. A proud smile appeared on Makoto's face, and even his tone grew lighter. Yeah, Willow was a huge help. She helped me gather evidence to sue my ex-wife while also staying by my side to protect my safety. If she hadn't stepped in with her bodyguards, I might have already been stabbed to death by that crazy woman. Watching him recall those unpleasant memories with such fondness, I was stunned for a moment before blurting out a rather inappropriate question. Do you like Willow? Hearing that, Makoto froze completely. After struggling for quite a while, he finally stammered out a reply. I don't really know. At first, I just saw her as an older sister. Since we were kids, she used to take me out to play, always looked after me, and gave me lots of gifts. When I was bullied in school, she'd step in and argue or even fight with people, ending up covered in bruises. When she found out I was divorced, she came to me on her own, saying she wanted to help. Later, my sister told me that Willow had secretly liked me for a long time. She's always been that cold and distant goddess type. Who would have thought she could fall into a secret crush? I still don't know what made her like me. Listening to him ramble on about the past, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Through Makoto's words, I came to know a completely different Willow from the one I thought I understood. It turned out she wasn't naturally indifferent, she just didn't like me. She wasn't the kind of person who stayed passive about everything. It was just that I wasn't someone who could move her heart. Unfortunately, I realized all this too late, after I had already fallen too deep and wasted so many years on her. Immersed in his memories, Makoto didn't notice the complex expression on my face. After that talk, he began treating me as a friend he could open up to, and with some courage, he slowly voiced a question that had been buried in his heart for a long time, to someone he'd only met a handful of times. George, what do you think of Willow? I caught the meaning behind his words. Looking up at the nearly emptied apartment, I answered honestly, I've known her for 10 years, but only recently did I realize I don't actually know her at all. So if you're asking me what kind of person she is, I don't think I can answer that. But what I can tell you is, this is the first time I've ever seen her like someone this much. Makoto nodded thoughtfully, looking somewhat reassured. The sun was already setting, and evening was approaching. He tugged at my arm and insisted on taking me out for dinner. Just then, Willow came downstairs, and the moment she heard that, she froze in place, her face clearly showing one word, reluctant. Seeing her expression, I couldn't help but smile faintly and declined his invitation. I still have something to do tonight. I'll let you two enjoy dinner. Before the siblings could even react, Willow grabbed me by the arm and led me straight into the car. You two go ahead. I'll drop him off and come back later. The moving truck followed behind our car as we drove out of the neighborhood. Willow's heart raced in sync with the flickering traffic lights, her mind spinning rapidly as she tried to come up with a reasonable explanation. I was the one who broke the awkward silence, my tone calm and even. There's no need to be so nervous. Before we got married, didn't we agree to keep it hidden from everyone except our parents, until we both felt ready to make it public? You're not ready yet, and I understand that. Willow took a deep breath, her voice carrying a trace of gratitude. Thank you for understanding. Honestly, little by little, I've started to accept the fact that I'm married. Just give me a bit more time, and I promise I'll make it public. I hummed softly, almost inaudibly, and turned to look out the window. 3 years of marriage, and still not public. And now she wanted to wait a little longer, but I didn't want to wait anymore. There's only so much time in a lifetime that one can afford to waste. Chapter 8. The whole way, I didn't say a single word. The scenery outside the window kept slipping backward. Yet my heart felt anchored by something heavy, so heavy that I could barely breathe. Willow, sitting beside me, kept sneaking glances my way, as if she wanted to say something but swallowed the words each time. I knew what she was thinking. Lately, she'd been sensing that something was off about me, but she couldn't figure out why. So, she started rambling, reviewing everything that had happened lately, hoping to find the root of it. I listened silently as she retraced our days together, from late-night overtime to endless law firm cases, from general work stress all the way to Makoto's divorce case, all things that had nothing to do with me. I was just an observer, orbiting the edges of her world. Eventually, she seemed to come to a conclusion. I must have been feeling down because she'd been too busy and neglected me. I didn't speak, I didn't even nod. A flicker of guilt passed over her face. Then, she offered softly, our 3rd wedding anniversary is coming up soon. Why don't we take a trip together, just to relax? I knew she was trying to make it up to me, but what was the point now? There were only a few days left in our divorce cooling off period. I didn't want to stir up anything new, so I found an excuse. My injury hasn't fully healed yet. Traveling would be too tiring. She thought about it, nodded as if agreeing that I had a point, then started listing alternatives: an art exhibition, a candlelit dinner, a short day trip. I turned them all down, one by one, each with a different excuse. I simply didn't want to keep playing this farce of married life. Sensing my cold attitude, A hint of confusion appeared on her face. She probably remembered how I used to be. How? At the mere mention of going out, I'd light up like an idiot. To keep her from getting suspicious, I offered a middle ground suggestion. That weekend, how about we go back to my old university together? She froze for a second, clearly not expecting that. I'd never been the sentimental type, but she didn't question it. She just smiled and said, "All right." Silence fell again. I pulled out my phone and opened my calendar. The two dates sat side by side, almost as if fate had arranged it. September 6th, our wedding anniversary, and also the exact day I'd been secretly in love with her for 10 years. September 7th, the divorce becomes official. Going back to campus at such a time felt like returning to the starting point and like drawing a quiet period at the end of a 10-year sentence of unrequited love. I stared at the screen for a long time before letting out a soft laugh and murmuring to myself, "This time, you won't stand me up again, will you?" She raised an eyebrow, the corners of her lips curving with rare amusement. "When have I ever stood you up, George? Don't slander me." I didn't respond. I turned to look out the window. In my head, I started counting. The last time, you promised to pick me up from the hospital, but instead you went to the beach with Makoto to watch the sunrise, leaving me alone in a hospital bed. The time before that, you said you'd celebrate my birthday with me, but you ran off to help him gather evidence for his case, saying you were too tired and forgot. And before that, you agreed to go back to my hometown with me, but he got his heart broken, so you stayed to drink with him, leaving me stranded in the suburbs by myself. Again and again, whenever it came to him, you always remembered, but me, I was always the one you forgot. That's not standing me up, that's priority, and I've never been yours. The following week, she didn't come home again. Every morning, the first thing I did was tear another page off the calendar. The house grew emptier and quieter with each passing day. I packed the last of my things, not just to tidy up, but as if preparing for my own quiet farewell. Time passed quickly, almost too quickly to grasp. Then, September 6th arrived. I got up early, shaved carefully, styled my hair with wax, and put on an old white shirt, the one she'd given me years ago. It was plain, but she'd once said that was her favorite look on me. Today was our wedding anniversary, also, the exact day marking 10 years of my secret love for her. I slipped my camera into my backpack, planning to take a few photos on campus to mark the end of this long, one-sided love story. When I went downstairs, she was already waiting. As soon as she saw me, she smiled and, just like old times, opened the car door for me with gentle politeness. Maybe because I knew our freedom was just around the corner, I felt strangely calm, even a little lighthearted. I started chatting about our college days. She relaxed too, and even offered to take a few more photos for me, saying the day deserved to be remembered. I smiled, nodded, and quietly tucked away all the emotions that were threatening to rise. The car soon stopped at the gates of the university. I got out first and stood by the side of the car, waiting for her. She had just unbuckled her seatbelt when her phone chimed several times. I hadn't planned to pay any attention, but when she didn't get out of the car for a long moment, I couldn't help but glance back. Her hand hovered over the phone screen, her expression hesitant. I didn't know what message she had just read, but a faint uneasiness began to tighten in my chest. After a few seconds, she looked up at me and said, "George, something urgent came up at the firm. I need to go handle it." I froze. Today of all days. Today was our wedding anniversary. She wasn't really planning to leave, was she? I tried to keep her. "Can't it wait just an hour?" She hesitated, then shook her head decisively. "It's really important. I'm afraid it can't." I smiled faintly and didn't press further. I wasn't an idiot. Her eyes, her tone, her expression, I understood them all too well. It was probably him again. But now, I no longer had the strength to expose it, to argue, or to demand an explanation. I let go of the car door and took a step back, watching her return to the driver's seat. Maybe she felt a little guilty, because she made the same kind of promise she always did, the kind that never meant anything in the end. "Just take a taxi home first." "Okay, once I finish up these next few days, I'll come with you again. We can even invite some of your professors for dinner." I didn't answer. She probably didn't realize this was going to be our last time. I stood there watching her leave, eyes following the car until it disappeared completely from view. For a moment, I looked up at the sky. The sunlight was so bright it hurt my eyes. I squinted, took my camera from my bag, and walked alone through the university gates. 30 minutes. That's how long it took me to visit every place where I had once felt my heart stir, where I had once waited, hoped, and dreamed. The classroom, the sports field, the library, the bench by the old path, and the plane tree, the one where I first saw her standing beneath it, memorizing words. I took photos of them all, not to remember her, but to say goodbye to myself. On the way home, I hailed a taxi. Sitting in the back seat, I stayed silent. The driver asked where I was headed. "Home," I said. Yes, it was time to go home. Back to that place that only had me left in it. The moment I walked in the door, my phone buzzed with a notification, a new post on WeChat Moments. I opened it. The very first one was from Makoto. A photo, taken in a hospital bed. He was lying under the covers, pale-faced. The caption was short. Fever's up to 39 degrees Celsius. But it's okay, someone's here with me. And right then, I finally understood. The so-called urgent case at the firm she had to rush to handle. It wasn't really work at all. She wasn't trapped by responsibility. She just never found it hard to walk away from me. Chapter 9. That was the moment I finally knew for sure. She hadn't gone back to the firm for work, she'd gone to take care of Makoto, who had a fever. I stared at that photo of him lying in a hospital bed for several seconds. Then I thought of how she had sat in the car that morning, looking me straight in the eye and swearing that something urgent came up at the law firm. I couldn't help but laugh under my breath. For him, she couldn't spare even half an hour. Hey, Willow, did it ever cross your mind that if you knew these few hours would be the last time we'd ever be together, would you regret standing me up once again? I shook my head. No, it didn't matter anymore. I opened WeChat, found Lawyer Mao's chat, and typed, Lawyer Mao, today's the last day of the divorce cooling off period. Do I still need to go to the firm to complete any paperwork? It didn't take long for him to reply. No need, Mr. Wong. Since the cooling off period ends today, the process is now officially complete. Congratulations on your new beginning. A new beginning. Those 3 words looked almost ironic on the screen, and yet I felt unexpectedly light. Yes, from today onward. From the moment I stopped loving Willow. From the moment I stopped hoping for her. I, George, would finally begin the brilliant life that belonged only to me. I smiled as I closed my phone and walked back inside the house. 3 hours left. I gathered up the last few things in the apartment that were mine, and threw them out, one by one. No hesitation, no sentimentality. 2 hours left. I opened my laptop and imported the photos I'd taken that morning at the university, stitching them together into a short video. There I was in those pictures, standing at the library steps, sitting on the bench by the track, leaning against the plane tree where we first met. But she wasn't in any of them, and that was fine. Those memories didn't need her anymore. 1 hour left. The video was finished. I watched it once through, then picked up my camera, turned on the recorder, and faced the lens. It was the last letter I would ever send her. No blame, no sorrow, just calm, simple words. Willow, our 10 years end here. When I finished, I took the memory card out and placed it back into the camera. I set it carefully on the bedside table, next to the signed divorce papers. Everything was in its place. I picked up my last suitcase and walked out the door. I didn't look back. I wasn't going to. From this moment on, Willow, we are divorced. I wish you happiness. And as for me, I'm finally free. On the other side, Willow didn't leave Makoto's place until his fever had mostly gone down. As she drove home, she dialed George's number, wanting to fulfill her promise from before. But after more than 10 calls, all she heard was the same cold message. The number you are trying to reach has been powered off. Messages went unanswered too. In 3 years of marriage, this was the first time Willow couldn't reach him. Memories of his car accident flashed in her mind, and unease crept up her spine. She turned the car around and drove straight home. The new apartment was neat, everything back in its proper place, no longer cluttered and chaotic. But with just one glance, Willow felt something was wrong. George's belongings, not a single one remained. Her heart skipped a beat. Panic flared. She rushed to the old house. The place was empty, utterly silent. She searched every room, calling his name, but no one answered. Only when she stepped into the bedroom did she see it, a camera sitting on the bedside table, next to a stack of papers. She recognized it immediately. Just days ago, he had been smiling while holding that camera. A breath of relief escaped her. Maybe he'd just gone out filming again. She pressed the power button, wanting to see what he'd recorded. The screen lit up. Soft, cheerful music began to play. A montage of video clips rolled, familiar corners of the university. Between the scenes, lines of text appeared. She was about to skip ahead when his voice filled the room. Willow, there are still lots of students skating at the plaza. I still remember confessing to you here for the first time. You turned me down, and that night I stayed up being emo the whole time. Willow, the library's still crowded as always. I didn't dare disturb anyone, so I took this from afar. Looks familiar, right? It used to be your favorite spot. Willow, this is the street you always took on your way home. And I was there too, watching you in secret, for 4 whole years. As the footage played, Willow felt herself drawn back 6 years, to those carefree, sunlit college days, back to the time when George had followed behind her, shy but persistent. Unconsciously, the corners of her lips curved into a faint smile. The music faded, but the video wasn't over. There was still 1 minute left. She thought maybe there would be some kind of surprise, perhaps he'd appear on screen with flowers or a message. She looked around expectantly, but he wasn't there. Perplexed, she pressed play again. After a few seconds of darkness, his face appeared in the center of the screen. His eyes were red, his expression tired. A chill of dread began to crawl up Willow's spine. Willow, this year marks 10 years since we met, 10 years since I first fell for you. Hard to believe, isn't it, that I've liked you long enough to measure it in decades? Honestly, it's hard for me to believe too, after all. How many decades does a person get in one lifetime? 10 years, 7 of them chasing you, 3 of them married to you. Every day, I tried to find a way into your heart. I gave everything I could, but life doesn't bend to our will. If someone doesn't love you, they just don't, no matter if 3, 7, or 10 more years go by. That fact will never change. So, on this day worth remembering, I made an important decision to let go of this obsession, and to give you the freedom to love Makoto the way you want. So when you watch this video, I just want to tell you, no, to inform you of one thing. He paused for a breath. Willow, we're divorced. Chapter 10. A month ago, I signed the papers. You did too. So starting today, we're both free. I'm leaving. Don't come looking for me. I wish you and Makoto a happy ending. And may the rest of my life burn bright and unrestrained. Each word exploded in Willow's ears like spring thunder. She couldn't believe what she was hearing, her pupils dilated, lips trembling uncontrollably. What did he mean she had signed the papers? He had signed them. That they were already divorced. When had she ever signed anything? The camera slipped from her hands with a loud clatter, knocking over the stack of documents onto her lap. On the top page, in bold letters, the title stared back at her, Divorce Agreement. Her breath caught. She snatched it up and flipped straight to the last page. There it was, George's signature, and on the line beside it, only a few centimeters away, another signature, hers. She recognized that handwriting instantly. It was unmistakably her own, flowing and confident strokes. Willow. For a long moment, she just stared at it, as fragments of memory she had ignored suddenly began piecing themselves together. That day at the law firm, when they accidentally ran into each other, George had said he came to see her to sign some papers, but he'd been coming downstairs from the second floor, and Lawyer Mao's office was on the second floor. The time Mao asked her to pass along the property division documents, his face had flashed with a strange flicker of guilt when he saw her. And every time she came home over the past month and noticed that a few of George's things were missing, they were always his, and only his. The neatly arranged layout of the new apartment, too, it all made sense now. Everything had been carefully planned. He had lied, right under her nose, and tricked her into signing the divorce papers without even realizing it. Then, quietly, he disappeared. Once she finally pieced everything together, a rush of panic and fury surged through her chest. Gripping the divorce papers and the camera, Willow bolted out the door. She sped all the way to the law firm, stormed up to the second floor, and burst into Mao's office. The papers hit the desk with a sharp slap. Her voice trembled with anger. "What's this divorce case you're doing, Lawyer Mao?" Chapter 11. Seeing how agitated she was, Lawyer Mao immediately set down his teacup and flipped through the stack of case files in front of him. Yes, I handled that case. What's wrong?" Willow's fury exploded, completely overwhelming her composure. She no longer cared about professional courtesy or friendship. "George's case, why didn't you tell me beforehand?" Mao blinked in confusion, caught entirely off guard. This case followed all standard procedures. It's already been submitted for review. There was nothing irregular. "Why on earth should I have told you in advance?" "Because it involves me," she shouted. "Why didn't you tell me?" At her accusation, Mao's jaw dropped. He hurriedly flipped to the final page of the document to check the woman's name. Willow. George's wife was Willow. Wait, Willow's married. Wasn't she single? His thoughts tangled in a cloud of disbelief, his expression shifting rapidly. I didn't know Mr. George was your husband. Weren't you single?" The words hit Willow like a bucket of cold water, instantly extinguishing the last of her anger. Her reason returned, and she realized how she must have sounded. She quickly bowed her head and apologized. Mao waved it off kindly, not taking offense. He even took her hand, his face full of concern. But Willow had no time for pleasantries. She only cared about finding George. "Lawyer Mao, I'll explain everything later. Right now, please, can you give me George's contact information? He's missing, and as his attorney, you must have a way to reach him." It was true, before leaving, George had given Mao a number and an address, but Mao was an old hand at the profession, cautious and bound by the rules. He refused firmly. "Willow, you're a lawyer yourself, you know I can't disclose a client's information. It's against the law. Don't put me in a difficult position. Mr. Wang may be your husband, but if you think carefully, you'll find a way to reach him. Don't worry, he's been very calm lately. He won't do anything rash." He overestimated her, completely. Despite being married for 3 years, Willow didn't have a single contact for any of George's family or friends. She didn't even know how to reach his parents or where his hometown was. She truly had no way to find him. So she tried pleading, reasoning, and persuading, hoping to move Mao with emotion. But no matter how hard she tried, his answer never changed. "I can't tell you anything." Desperate, Willow finally resorted to a compromise. She wrote a letter and asked him to forward it to George on her behalf. Later that evening, Mao sent her a message. Mr. Wang saw the letter, but he didn't respond. Willow immediately opened WeChat, her fingers trembling, ready to send him a message, only to find that his profile picture was grayed out. Under his name, the words glared back at her. "This account has been deleted." He had really done it, severed every last tie between them. After 10 years of knowing him, Willow suddenly felt as if she were meeting George for the very first time. Chapter 12. After leaving the capital, I didn't go home, nor did I tell anyone. I went straight to the train station. I had no destination in mind. Standing in front of the electronic board, I pointed randomly at a place, Dragon City, and bought the earliest departing ticket. This was my first trip after the divorce. Heading from north to south, the temperature gradually rose. The scenery outside the train window became humid and warm, as if reminding me that this was a complete farewell. When I arrived in Dragon City, I carried my luggage out of the station. The place was unfamiliar, and I didn't bother checking any travel guides. I simply found a small inn to leave my bags, then started wandering the streets. No one knew me here. No one knew I had just gotten divorced. I ordered a steaming bowl of rice noodles and sat at a bustling street stall, sipping a cold drink. For the first time, I felt an indescribable sense of relief. A notification chimed, ding dong. I looked down. It was a message from Lawyer Mao. "Hey, brother-in-law. Why didn't you tell me who you were before filing for divorce?" Oh dear. This got messy. Since I didn't give her your contact info, Willow got quite upset with me. She wrote a letter and asked me to forward it to you. Take a look. I wasn't surprised that she was angry. After all, I had taken the signed papers and left without a word. So resolute. But that she actually wrote me a letter, that did surprise me. I opened the file Mao had sent and my eyes went straight to the page count. 8,000 words. I almost laughed out loud. Just a divorce. And she wrote 8,000 words. Was she planning to publish a memoir? It was probably full of accusations, emotional neglect, old resentments dragged up again, all that stuff. I was enjoying my noodles and in a good mood. I didn't want her words to ruin my appetite. So I closed the document, set my phone to silent, and went back to finishing that bowl of noodles. With each bite, each sip of broth, it felt like my bitterness was slowly dissolving. Afterward, I wandered through the night market, grilled skewers, cold beer, chatting casually with a few fellow travelers I'd never met before. The divorce no longer felt suffocating. Not like it had a few days ago. It was more like I had finally set down a heavy load. Later that night, back in the hotel, I thought for a moment and finally replied to Lawyer Mao with a simple, "Thank you." Then, I forwarded that ridiculously long letter back to him, adding just a few lines of my own. Too long. Didn't read. Already divorced. Don't bother. After sending it, I tossed the phone aside. If she had really wanted to talk, shouldn't she have done that during those 3 years of marriage? Why wait until now to explain? At this point, I no longer had the strength to attend her makeup lessons in love. She wanted freedom, so I let her go. And I wanted peace, so I hoped she would let me go too. Chapter 13. Willow clutched her head, forcing herself to recall everything, desperately trying to figure out where things had gone wrong. Memories surged one after another, until they stopped at the day of the move. While she and Alicia had been running up and down the stairs, it seemed that Makoto and George had spent some time alone together. But if she thought about it carefully, that day had only been the 9th day of the divorce cooling-off period. Even if he had accidentally learned something, it wouldn't have led him to such a drastic conclusion ahead of time. The real cause of everything must have started when they met at the law firm, those few days when he tricked her into signing what he claimed was a property agreement. The moment she remembered what had happened the day before, Willow's face turned deathly pale. After realizing that George had accidentally found that photo album, Willow didn't sleep a wink that night. All night long, scenes from the past years replayed endlessly in her mind. If the first decade of her life had been spent chasing after Makoto, then the 3 years after his marriage were her lessons in learning to let him go. From the moment he married his ex-wife, she had decided to treat him only as a younger brother from then on. And as for George, who had always been the one chasing her, Willow had only ever seen him as a friend at first. Perhaps because they both shared the same pain of loving someone they couldn't have. She had always felt guilty toward him. That guilt lasted for many years, until 3 years ago, when they met again. The moment she saw him, she knew he hadn't moved on. So when her parents started pressuring her to get married, she wrestled with the same question for a long time. Should she obey them and marry a stranger from a blind date? Or should she accept George, and give him a chance? In the end, she thought, if she married him, at least he wouldn't have to suffer like she did. The young Willow believed that fulfilling someone else's wish could somehow ease her own despair of unrequited love. But back then, she didn't yet understand that getting what you don't truly want can sometimes be a crueler fate than not getting what you love. And fulfilling someone, it's never as easy as it sounds. Chapter 14. On one side was the abyss of a love she had already lost. On the other, the closed walls of a marriage she was about to enter. Torn between the two, she was nearly split in half. In that near breakdown state, she suggested a secret marriage, and George agreed without hesitation. So Willow got married, confused, unsure of how to forget one man, and equally unsure how to build a life with another. During the 3 years that followed, she and Makoto rarely contacted each other, only seeing one another occasionally at group gatherings. All the photos from those gatherings, especially the ones taken with others present, she quietly stored away in that photo album. Day by day, she tried to teach herself to let go of her obsession, but letting go was never easy. Out of habit built over years, her eyes would unconsciously seek him out, her emotions shifting whenever he appeared. Especially after learning of his divorce, she felt an urgent need to help him escape his misery and start anew. After all, he had once been someone she had truly loved, and even knowing they could never be together, she still wished him peace and happiness. But all of this existed only in Willow's heart. She never said a word of it to anyone. They say unrequited love is a secret kept by one heart alone, but she forgot that George, too, had been in love with her, and that made it easy for him to see through her silence. It was only after losing him that she realized she had exposed her heart long ago. And when the truth came out, her anger wasn't just about being tricked into a divorce. She was furious that he had judged her guilty without asking for the truth, furious that he had left so abruptly, giving her no chance to explain. She was angry at herself, too, for not noticing the signs sooner, for always ignoring him out of habit, for failing to shoulder the responsibilities of a wife. But above all, she was angry that she hadn't realized sooner what George truly meant to her. After more than 1,000 days and nights together, she had long since grown used to his presence in her life. Even after hearing that Makoto was divorced, she had never once thought of ending her own marriage, because from the moment she received that marriage certificate, Willow had already made up her mind. She wanted to walk through this life hand in hand with George. Chapter 15. On the third day after George left, Willow had tried every possible way, but still couldn't reach him. Time kept slipping away, and the panic in her heart grew heavier with every passing hour. Makoto had come looking for her several times during those days, but she had turned him down each time. So when he finally showed up at her door and saw her haggard, pale face, he was startled, his eyes full of concern. "Willow, what happened to you?" At that moment, seeing Makoto again brought up a storm of mixed emotions in Willow's heart. She had already transformed the love she once felt for him into something more like familial affection, but she'd never found the right moment to say so. Yet now that George had left because of a misunderstanding about her and Makoto, she could no longer afford to delay. She had to explain everything clearly. "Makoto, I've been trying to reach George these past few days." "George? What happened to him?" The worry that appeared on Makoto's face only made Willow feel more ashamed. "He's disappeared. I can't find him anywhere." "What? Disappeared? Why so suddenly? Is it because of the divorce? Does it have something to do with his ex-wife?" "Yes, it's because of the divorce, and his ex-wife is involved. But to be precise, it's because of me." Makoto's confusion deepened. Seeing the bewilderment on his face, Willow took a deep breath and forced herself to confess. "I'm George's ex-wife. We got married 3 years ago. I've been hiding it from you all this time." "I'm sorry, Makoto." The words hit him like a hammer. He froze on the spot. All those moments when he had felt something was off, those faint, nagging instincts that he'd brushed aside, they hadn't been illusions after all. He suddenly understood everything, yet he still couldn't bring himself to accept it. His voice trembled with disbelief and anger. "Why did you hide it? Do you think that was fair to George?" Willow fell silent, unable to explain the tangled emotions in her heart. Her silence only made Makoto's frustration boil over. He thought back to his last conversation with George. Guilt and regret surged through him. If he had known that Willow was George's wife, he would have killed those misplaced feelings the moment they surfaced. He never would have spoken to George the way he did. Now, realizing he had unknowingly become the catalyst that shattered their marriage, even if unintentionally, Makoto was crushed with remorse. "You shouldn't be apologizing to me, you should be apologizing to George." "I know." Willow's voice trembled. "But he's disappeared since the divorce. I can't find him anywhere." At that, Makoto felt a deep ache in his chest. He knew then that George must have truly given up. No one understood George's pain better than he did. People don't just vanish into thin air. If you really can't reach him, it only proves one thing: you never truly had him in your heart. The words cut deep, raw and merciless, piercing straight through her defenses. A wave of pain rippled through Willow's chest. She lowered her head, defeated, her throat tightening as tears threatened to spill. These 3 years. I failed him. I ignored everything he did for me. I ignored his feelings. By the end, her voice had nearly broken. Makoto said nothing more. He turned silently, each step heavy, and walked away. Watching his back fade from view, Willow felt her sorrow and regret swallow her whole. Everything that had happened, this mess, this heartbreak, was her fault, and in her mistakes, she had dragged down 2 innocent men. She felt utterly unworthy, and beyond redemption. Chapter 16. By the 7th day after George's departure, Willow had nearly been driven to the edge of despair. With her back against a bottomless abyss and nowhere left to retreat, she suddenly became clear-headed. The divorce cooling-off period was already over, but the legal procedures were not yet complete. Whether to finalize the divorce certificate or to proceed with a court filing, George would have to come back. Once she understood that, the defeated, lifeless Willow finally began to pull herself together. She ended her leave and returned to the law firm. The first thing she did was go to see Lawyer Mao. In the past few days, Lawyer Mao had forwarded countless messages to George on her behalf. Seeing Willow now, thin, pale, and exhausted, he couldn't help feeling sorry for her. He was about to offer a few words of comfort, but she spoke first, her tone calm and composed. Lawyer Mao, please tell him that I agree to the divorce. He can come back to sign the papers. Lawyer Mao nearly choked on his tea. You're agreeing to it just like that? You're not even going to try to win him back? You've been married for 3 years. For heaven's sake. He refuses to talk to me. What else can I do? The only thing left is to respect his decision. I can't exactly drag him into court over it. Lawyer Mao sighed deeply and shook his head in helplessness. All right then, I'll notify Mr. Wang. Don't be too hard on yourself. Willow said nothing more and quietly returned to her office. She sank into her chair, her body, tense for so long, finally relaxing just a little. In her mind, though, she was already planning her next move. The truth was, she had never actually intended to go through with the divorce. What she told Lawyer Mao was just a pretext, a way to lure George back so that she could at least see him once more. As long as he returned to the capital, she would have a chance to explain everything. He had loved her for 10 years. If she could clear up the misunderstanding, surely, just maybe, there would still be a chance to start over. A message soon came from Lawyer Mao. George was at the seaside, sunbathing. In the week since he had left, he'd already traveled through 2 or 3 cities, seemingly having left all the bitterness and frustration of the divorce far behind him. Chapter 17. When I saw Willow's message on WeChat, just 4 simple words, I agree to divorce, I didn't feel the slightest sense of relief. Instead, I felt a twinge of suspicion. Hadn't she been pestering me for days, writing long letters, sending endless messages, and now she suddenly agrees? Was this another one of her tricks? I wasn't about to let myself be fooled again. To be safe, I messaged Lawyer Mao to confirm whether that meant the process was finally over. His reply came almost instantly. After the cooling-off period ends, both parties must personally go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to finalize the divorce registration. Otherwise, the agreement is invalid. The only alternative is to file a lawsuit. Reading that, I was left speechless. Seriously, I just wanted a divorce. Why did it have to be this complicated? Was fate itself trying to stop me from escaping this miserable loop? I sat at the edge of the bed, sighed heavily, and stared at the ceiling with a bitter laugh. Then I got up, put on my sunglasses, and started packing my things in silence. My trip to Dragon City would have to come to an abrupt end. The next morning at 10, I boarded a flight back to the capital. The moment the plane touched down, I felt reality come crashing back down on me. At the exit, David was holding up his phone like a human signpost, standing on his toes to look through the crowd. When he finally spotted me, his eyes went wide. Damn, George, you got so tan. I smirked lazily and replied, this isn't a tan, it's a healthy bronze glow. He burst out laughing, clapping me on the shoulder. All right, as long as you're cracking jokes again, I can relax. Honestly, my mood was better than it had been in weeks. On the drive back, I told him a few funny stories from the trip. Then out of nowhere, he asked, so, Willow really agreed to the divorce? My hand paused for a moment. I looked out the window at my own reflection in the side mirror, those cold, emotionless eyes, and nodded faintly. The cooling off period's over. Whether she agrees or not doesn't matter anymore. If she tries to back out now, I'll just take the legal route, one way or another. This ends. David frowned slightly, but a lawsuit could drag on forever. Man, you really don't want this to get messy again. I let out a short, dry laugh. Exactly. That's why I came back right away. Then I added, if it can end peacefully, great. But if she still refuses to let go, then I'll see it through to the end. This time, I'm done. Completely done. When Lawyer Mao told her I was back in the capital, Willow immediately asked to meet me. I refused. I didn't want to see her, and there was no reason to. Divorce, to me, Had to be clean, no lingering strings, no last minute please. Her little push and pull games stopped working on me a long time ago. Still, I knew she wouldn't give up easily. Sure enough, Mao later told me she'd been reading over the divorce agreement and property division terms again and again, and even revisited our old home, trying to recreate every detail with new things, as if rebuilding the past would bring me back. Did she really think I'd change my mind? I ignored all of it. Days went by, and by late September, I finally decided to meet her, just once. The place, in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau. I wasn't interested in circles anymore. I wanted it straightforward. She came, of course, empty-handed, and the moment I saw her, I knew her so-called agreement to divorce was nothing but a lie. Just as I expected, I didn't get angry. In fact, I almost found her final struggle amusing, pathetic, even. With a faint, cold smile, I spoke in a voice that carried no warmth at all. You say you agree to the divorce, yet you show up empty-handed. That's your idea of sincerity? She didn't reply. She just stared at me, eyes locked on my face, as if trying to find some trace of emotion, anything that might reassure her. But I disappointed her. I looked and felt better than ever. Better even than before the divorce started. Even I had to admit, I looked healthier now. Only without her around did I finally start living like a human being again. Turns out, through this whole marriage, I was the only one who'd ever been suffering. At last, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Can we talk, George? I let out a small laugh, my tone calm and detached. Sure, once we finish the divorce registration, I'll talk about whatever you want. The last flicker of hope on her face shattered completely. Her voice came out hoarse, trembling as she tried to hold something back. I didn't bring my ID. Will you come home with me to get it, please? I didn't even bother pretending to hesitate. Go yourself. I'll wait here. But she still refused to give up, scrambling for another excuse. There are a lot of your things at home. I don't know where you put them. It'll take me a while to find them. That part, admittedly, was true. I've never been an organized person. I tend to toss things wherever, which would indeed make it a hassle for her. Still, I didn't trust her for a second. Without a word, I lowered my head and sent David a message, sharing my live location, just in case. Then I said flatly, too tired to argue anymore. Fine, I'll go with you. She drove. I sat in the passenger seat. Neither of us spoke. I stared out the window, watching the city blur past, while she seemed lost in thought, maybe replaying old memories. After a long silence, she tried to start a conversation. These past few days, where did you go? I kept my gaze forward, my voice like ice. We're already divorced. It's none of your business. That one hit her hard. I could hear it in the way she inhaled sharply before replying, her tone low but steady. We've only finished the cooling off period. The divorce isn't finalized yet. If we don't file within 30 days, the application expires. I'd been waiting for her to bring that up. These past few days, I hadn't been wasting time. I'd been poring over legal codes, studying every clause and loophole in the marriage law about divorce procedures. Did she really think she could use that to trap me? How naive. I cut her off before she could say more, unwilling to step into her logic trap. My tone was flat, edged with mockery. No need for Lawyer Lou to educate me on marriage law. What I do want to know is this: you don't even like me. So why are you using not divorcing as some kind of threat? Or are you still unhappy with the property division agreement? Chapter 18. We happened to reach a traffic light. Willow stopped the car and turned to look at me with a deep, heavy gaze. I'm not dissatisfied, she said slowly and firmly. If you really want a divorce, I can walk away with nothing. I'm not trying to threaten you. I just have too many questions I still don't understand. I just can't accept it. Can't accept it. I froze for a moment, caught off guard. She actually used can't accept it to describe how she felt now. I gave a short, cold laugh, my tone still indifferent. What is there for you not to accept? That you're being divorced without knowing the full story? Or that this time it wasn't you who filed for divorce, but me, and that hurts your pride? Neither. George. I heard her let out a soft laugh, not one of relief, but of exhaustion and bitter self-mockery, like a sigh that had been held back for too long. I can't accept being misunderstood by you. I can't accept that you won't give me even one chance. I can't accept cutting things off with you completely. I suddenly didn't know what to say. What did she even mean by that? Wasn't she the one who liked Makoto? Hadn't she been secretly in love with him for years? This marriage had always just been her way to escape from that old love, a temporary shelter at best. But the way she was speaking now, why did it sound like she truly didn't want to let me go? Then she spoke again. George, I watched the video you left at home. I know why you want to leave. It's because you think I still like Makoto, right? I stared ahead at the red light and asked quietly, isn't that true? She didn't deny it right away. After a moment of silence, she spoke in a low voice. I'm sorry. I should have explained everything to you a long time ago, but I kept putting it off. Kept waiting. I let you misunderstand. Let you hurt for so long. It's all my fault. Her apology surprised me, but honestly, by that point, I no longer wanted to hear her belated explanations. I just wanted it to end. You're right, you did wrong me, I said calmly, looking at her profile. So if you really want to make it up to me, just end this cleanly. Sign the divorce papers. Once you do, I can forgive everything. As soon as I said that, she froze. The light in her eyes dimmed instantly, and she looked almost in pain. But I didn't say more. There was no point in circling around the issue anymore. A one-sided marriage, I was done wasting my time on it. Yet suddenly, she whispered, "But I don't want a divorce." I turned to her, stunned. I even rubbed my eyes, wondering if I'd heard wrong. "What? George, I'm trying to keep you," she said, her voice barely audible. "Can you give me another chance?" I frowned instinctively. For a moment, I actually wondered if she was setting me up. She was never the type to bow her head or plead. Her sudden softness made my chest tighten. I stared at her for a long time before finally voicing the question that had been suffocating me. "You were heartbroken for 3 years and never moved on. I, on the other hand, foolishly loved you for 3 years, and you never wavered. This marriage, from beginning to end, was just me deluding myself. You never loved me. So by asking for a divorce, I'm only trying to correct a rash mistake I made back then. Now Makoto's divorced too, and he clearly has feelings for you. By all logic, you should support my decision. Free yourself early so you can pursue him openly, shouldn't you?" "No," she said softly, shaking her head. Her eyes suddenly shone brightly, looking straight at me with the same steady resolve I once had when I looked at her. "From the day Makoto got married, I told myself he could only ever be like a brother to me. I got married not because he wouldn't marry me, but because I wanted to forget him. My marriage to you was never a mistake. I truly want to spend my life with you." After all these years of knowing Willow, it was the first time I'd ever heard her speak with such solemn sincerity. It almost sounded like a confession. But I wasn't the same fool who used to melt at her every word. 10 years. For 10 whole years, I treated her as the light of my life, and yet that light had never once shone on me. Now she says she wants to spend her life with me. The cruel joke is, if she'd said this back then, I might have cried tears of joy. But now, all I feel is exhaustion. I closed my eyes, unwilling to look at those burning eyes of hers that still held a flicker of hope. My tone was as calm as I could make it, though even I could hear the chill in it. "These words you're saying," I paused, opened my eyes, and met her gaze. "Do you even believe them yourself?" Chapter 19. I never thought she would still say something like that. "I'll prove that everything I said is true. George, please, give me another chance. Okay." Her voice sounded so earnest, but I couldn't feel even a flicker of emotion. It wasn't that I was cold-blooded. I had simply grown tired of hearing these hollow promises. The car slowly rolled into the underground garage and stopped. I unfastened my seatbelt, opened the door, and said flatly, "Hand me the divorce certificate. You can prove yourself however you like after that." Without looking at her reaction, I stepped out and walked straight toward the elevator. She followed behind me silently, saying nothing. Yet I could feel the weight of her emotions, that suffocating sadness slowly spreading through the air. I didn't turn around. There was only one thought left in my mind: end this, as soon as possible. When the elevator ascended, I stood in the corner, watching the numbers climb one by one. Each floor felt like a countdown toward freedom. The door opened. I walked to the apartment door and entered the code. A soft chime, ding-dong, and the door swung open. I lowered my head as I stepped inside, debating whether to change my shoes, when something on the shoe rack caught my eye: a pair of bare slippers, identical to mine, the exact same kind I used to wear in the old house. But I remembered clearly, on the day I left, I threw them away. Frowning, I lifted my head and scanned the room. Then I froze. This wasn't my old home, yet it looked exactly like it. The curtains, the teacups, the arrangement of the cabinets, even the wedding photo in the living room, everything was replicated down to the smallest detail. It was as if someone had reconstructed my memories, frame by frame, to make me believe that nothing had ever changed. "Why did you decorate the place like this? And where did you even get all these identical items?" I finally asked, confusion and a hint of guardedness in my voice. She stood behind me, her tone slow but stubbornly calm. "I always thought you'd move in with me, that we'd start a new life together. I never expected you'd already planned to leave, to abandon me here alone. If I didn't make the house look like this, I'd feel like I didn't have a home anymore." I didn't turn around. My eyes stayed fixed on the wedding photo. She continued, "As for all these things, they weren't hard to find. It just took some effort, that's all." Effort, she certainly had that, just directed in all the wrong places. I didn't bother responding. I didn't have the patience to watch her perform her little tragedy of devotion. Without even changing my shoes, I strode deeper inside. "Nice," I said flatly. "This'll make it easier to sort through things. The sooner I get the documents, the sooner I can leave. Saves everyone time." I knew the words were harsh, but I couldn't stop myself. Because finally, she was going to taste what I had swallowed every day for the past 3 years. I could feel her fists clenching behind me, her effort to suppress her emotions. But what of it? Now she finally understood. I wasn't born submissive, nor without temper. For 3 years, I played the role of the obedient husband, gentle, considerate, patient. But no one knew that was just my disguise, my repeated compromise. It wasn't that I couldn't speak cruelly. I just feared that doing so would hurt her. But now I finally understood. My silence, my tolerance, my restraint to her, they were nothing more than expected. She never truly considered me. Even when I was covered in wounds, she still found ways to sprinkle salt into them. And now, she says she wants to win me back. But me? I can't believe her anymore. At that moment, I saw her standing there, pale and frozen, as if someone had stabbed her straight through the heart. She didn't say a word, but I knew she finally understood. Every sentence I spoke cut like a knife, no twists, no mercy, straight into her chest. But I felt no guilt, because this pain was long overdue. For 3 years, disappointment piled upon disappointment until it became despair. She thought I was docile and easy to coax, that no matter how she ignored or hurt me, I'd always stay. Well, now she knows better. The one who needed to wake up has finally done so. She clutched her chest, her eyes vacant, standing in that replica of our home. That desperate look, trying to grasp something only to watch it shatter completely. I knew it all too well. I said nothing. I didn't plan to comfort her, because I knew this pain she was feeling now was nothing more than the fruit of the seeds she had sown herself. She was simply reaping what she deserved. Chapter 20. It only took me 10 minutes to find all the documents I needed, with everything I had prepared in advance, plus the experience I'd accumulated over the years. I worked through the checklist quickly, efficient, detached, like I was handling a routine office file rather than the formal end of a marriage. After stuffing the papers into a folder, I walked out of the room, only to find her slumped by the door, pale-faced and dazed. I narrowed my eyes. What kind of act was she putting on this time? Was she trying to feign illness now, to delay the divorce procedure on purpose? I walked up to her, every nerve on guard, my tone laced with suspicion, feeling unwell. I'll admit, my voice came out cold, more like I was bracing myself for one of her tricks than expressing concern. Of course, she could tell. She just shook her head, forced herself upright, and even managed a small smile. I'm fine, let's go. Seeing she could still move, I eased up a little and turned toward the door. Neither of us spoke on the way. I kept glancing at my watch, mentally calculating the time, worried we might miss the last processing hour. When we reached the Civil Affairs Bureau, I grabbed her hand for the first time and rushed upstairs, not out of affection, but because I wanted to get it over with. End it quickly, be free quickly. The moment we stepped inside, I couldn't help but remember 3 years ago, on our wedding day, I had also held her hand like that, tight and hurried, afraid she might back out at the last moment. Back then, I was terrified she'd run away, that I wouldn't even get the chance to start this relationship. Who could have guessed that 3 years later, we'd end up here again, walking the same steps, only toward an ending. Inside the hall stood many couples like us, faces heavy with all kinds of emotion. Some were restless, some cold, some with eyes rimmed red, and we were probably the quietest pair there. She didn't speak, and neither did I, but I could tell, from the way she refused to meet my gaze, that there wasn't a trace of attachment left in her. Good. She'd finally come to her senses. The sooner we let go, the better for both of us. By the time the paperwork was done, it was already dusk. I looked down at the divorce certificate in my hand. It felt like a 1,000-pound stone had been lifted from my shoulders. I could finally breathe again. Even looking at her didn't irritate me anymore. I flexed my wrist and couldn't help but laugh. All right. Thanks for taking care of me these past few years. We're even now. Goodbye. I turned to leave, not bothering to look back. But just as I took my first step, she grabbed my wrist. Her voice came from behind, calm but stubborn. Who said we're even? I glanced at the divorce papers in my hand, then at her pale face, and suspicion flared instantly. What now? What trick was she playing this time? The law says we're divorced. Isn't that even enough for you? My tone was cold, almost mocking. I figured this time she'd finally give up, but instead, she looked strangely composed, speaking with a quiet confidence that unsettled me. Yes, legally, we're no longer husband and wife, but we were once classmates. That fact doesn't change. I let out a dry laugh. Then let me remind you, even back in school, we weren't exactly close. Hardly what you'd call a deep connection. She didn't deny it. In fact, she smiled, as if she had expected that response all along. You're right. I wasn't very warm toward you back then. But who told you to keep pestering me all the time? I froze for a second. I hadn't expected her to bring that up, especially now. Those memories, that clumsy, relentless youth of mine, I'd replayed them countless times in my head. And now, she brushed it all aside with a single, careless line. You just wouldn't stop pestering me. My ears burned a little. I cleared my throat and looked away. That was a long time ago. What's the point of bringing that up now? True, it doesn't matter anymore. She shrugged lightly, her tone casual, too casual, which somehow made me uneasy. Then let's talk about something more recent. Recent. My brows drew together. I eyed her warily. What are you trying to say? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked straight at me, her eyes reflecting my guarded expression, and suddenly, she smiled. Her voice was softer now, but there was something in it, something serious, almost unsettlingly sincere. Didn't you say, she began, that once we got divorced, the past would be wiped clean, and whatever I wanted to talk about, you'd listen? Chapter 21. Yeah, I guess I did say that, but, heaven knows, when I said it, all I wanted was to push her into signing the divorce papers faster. I never had the slightest genuine intention of opening up my heart. Who in their right mind would want to bare their soul to their ex-wife on the very day they get their divorce certificate? Isn't that supposed to be the time to grab a drink with friends, celebrate newfound freedom, block her number, delete her contact, and officially kick off a happy single life? Unfortunately, before I could clarify, she stepped in front of me again, relentless, her tone so serious it sent a chill straight down my spine. You tricked me into signing that agreement before and then vanished without a word. Now you've changed all your contact info. If I let you go this time and you disappear again, where am I supposed to find you to make you keep your promise? The way she said it, firm, righteous, almost prosecutorial, made me feel like a defendant being cross-examined in court. I wanted to come back with something sharp, but somehow, guilt crept in instead. Damn her. That professional advantage of hers, being a lawyer, made her too good at twisting words and catching loopholes. And of course, she could see my hesitation. She went straight for the kill. You wanted the divorce, I didn't. But I still respected your decision, didn't I? I didn't chase you down for lying to me, didn't refuse to let you go. I just want to talk. After all, we were classmates for 4 years and married for 3. George, are you really planning to be this heartless? Her words hit a nerve, and honestly, she wasn't wrong. Plus, the way she was speaking, soft, cautious, almost pleading, I'd never seen her like that before. It disarmed me. Before I knew it, I had my phone out. Fine, I'll give you my contact info. But listen, don't text or call me every day like before. Keep things polite. As for meeting up, we'll see. Depends on the situation. She scanned the QR code so fast, I didn't even hear the confirmation tone before she exhaled in relief, looking absurdly pleased with herself. Then she trailed behind me all the way, repeating like a mantra. Then promise me, no blocking, no deleting, no leaving me on read. You have to keep your word. I could feel a headache coming on. My tone turned impatient. As long as you behave like a normal classmate and don't cross the line, I won't delete you. Only then did she give me that satisfied smile. And, in the most ceremonious manner possible, she walked ahead and opened the passenger door for me, gesturing politely like she was chauffeuring some VIP guest. I didn't even acknowledge her, just turned and hailed a taxi instead. No way I was falling for this sudden kindness. She had to be scheming something, but I'd barely taken 2 steps when I heard her sigh softly behind me. Divorced already, and you won't even share a car ride with me? How heartless. That one line gave me goosebumps. I jumped into the taxi without looking back and urged the driver to go fast. If I'd stayed one more minute, I might have actually regretted the divorce tonight. When I got to David's place, I pushed open the door and nearly jumped out of my skin as 2 party poppers exploded right in my face. Balloons, streamers, cake, snacks, and on the TV screen, a huge banner read, "Congratulations George on regaining freedom." I just stood there, stunned, eyes suddenly stinging. Damn, this guy really gets me. David, probably afraid I'd start bawling, patted me on the shoulder and spoke in a tone as gentle as if he were comforting a heartbroken girl. Come on, man, what's with the tears on a happy day? Swallow those back. Tonight we're drinking till we drop, celebrating your glorious return to single life. My nose burned. For a second, I almost wanted to wipe it on his shoulder. You're right, we're drinking till we can't feel our faces. Oh please, you. The guy who hasn't touched a drop in 3 years, daring to talk big in front of me. You forget who I was before I got married. The legendary 1,000 shots. Never drunk. I'll show you tonight, I've still got it. Ha, if I don't drink you under the table tonight, I'll change my last name. That night, I got completely wasted, but strangely enough, Willow didn't appear in my dreams at all. It was just me, light, unburdened, and utterly free, lying on a mountaintop, staring at the stars. Chapter 22. After the hangover, I slept like a rock. When I finally woke up, it was already afternoon. David had gone to work long ago. I grabbed a quick bite and realized staying home alone was unbearably dull. So I picked up a fruit basket and headed out. There were a few things I'd been meaning to settle for days, and now that I had time, I figured I might as well start crossing them off the list. I hailed a cab straight to the law firm. I wanted to thank Attorney Mao in person. Over the past 2 months, he'd gone above and beyond handling my divorce case, not only keeping things confidential, but also acting as a go-between between Willow and me, even helping to calm emotions on both sides. Honestly, that was way beyond what a lawyer should ever have to do. I felt genuinely guilty about it. As soon as I entered his office, he looked up and said, "Brother-in-law, why didn't you just tell me the truth from the start?" The moment I heard brother-in-law, I instinctively corrected him. "Attorney Mao, from now on, just call me George. Willow and I are divorced. Brother-in-law doesn't really fit anymore." I paused, then added, "I didn't mean to keep it from you. It's just, you know how we kept our marriage a secret. I didn't want to put you in a difficult position." He nodded in understanding but still sighed, steering the conversation back to the main point. "You two were college classmates. Isn't it a pity to end things like this? Are you really planning to cut ties completely?" That question hit right in the chest. Truthfully, up until yesterday, I had intended to sever all contact, but after seeing how she behaved yesterday, I had to admit, I was wavering a little. Even setting emotions aside, there were still practical things to deal with. Like, how the hell was I supposed to explain all this to my parents? With their temper, they'd probably go confront her in person before calming down. If I didn't warn her in advance, things could get messy fast. Forget it. The whole never see each other again idea might have to wait. I let out a small sigh, shoved those thoughts aside, and said to him, "We were together for 3 years and never once had a big fight. Even the divorce was peaceful. We're not enemies, but we can't go back to what we were. As for whether we'll talk again, I don't know. Guess it depends on fate." I said it in a neutral tone, not closing the door entirely, but not making promises either. He understood and nodded, a flicker of relief passing over his face. I knew he'd been worried about Willow. He must have noticed how close to breaking she'd been lately. She was his protege, after all, so it was natural he'd feel protective. I didn't call him out on it. We chatted a bit more, then I stood up to leave, but just as I opened the door, I froze. Willow was standing right outside. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Attorney Mao looked just as startled. "What are you doing lurking outside my office?" he exclaimed, clutching his chest. She ignored him, her eyes fixed squarely on me. A bad feeling settled in my gut. Before coming here, I checked. She was supposed to be on leave today. That was the only reason I dared to stop by. I hadn't expected her to catch wind of my visit and show up early. I didn't want another scene. My tone was ice cold. "Move. I've got things to do." She stepped aside obediently, and without hesitation, I walked past her and headed downstairs. But the moment I stepped outside, I froze again. A torrential downpour. The street was practically flooded, water already up to my calves. I opened my umbrella and stood there, staring at the empty road. Perfect. I pulled out my phone to call a ride. 10 minutes later, nothing. Not a single car available. The rain just kept getting heavier, pounding the pavement like a drum. It didn't look like it'd stop anytime soon. I checked the weather app. The forecast said it wouldn't lighten up until after 7 p.m., which meant I'd be stuck here for at least 6 hours. I gave a dry laugh, shaking my head. Figures. Even the weather's got a sense of timing. Chapter 23. Need some help? I turned around and saw Willow standing by the doorway. The misty rain blurred her face, but there was unmistakable concern in her eyes. I didn't answer. I acted as if I hadn't heard her, but her skin has always been thicker than a wall. She didn't seem embarrassed at all, just kept talking on her own. "The last time it rained this hard was about a year ago, wasn't it? You said you wanted to try baking, but you ended up turning the whole kitchen into a disaster zone." Her voice was soft, carried along by the sound of rain, layer upon layer, like it came from far away. Yet every word still landed squarely in my ears, in my chest. I couldn't block her out. The rain was too heavy, nowhere to hide. So she stood there, little by little, unearthing every fragment of memory buried in the cracks of our life together. From that storm, she moved to our first date, from our small domestic quarrels after marriage, to the days back in college when I wouldn't stop chasing her. She spoke so earnestly, as if she were telling someone else's story, and I just stood there, trapped, forced to sink into those all too familiar scenes. But the gentler her voice grew, the more exhausted I felt, because every single thing she mentioned, I remembered vividly, and just when I'd finally started to forget, she had to drag it all back out, as if she was terrified I might actually move on. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "If you're so bored," I cut her off, "why don't you grab your car and make some extra cash?" She blinked, startled for a second, then smiled, as if she'd instantly caught my meaning. "Sure," she said lightly. "Hop in." I didn't say another word. I got into the passenger seat, buckled my belt, and closed my eyes, pretending to sleep the moment I sat down. To her credit, she stayed quiet. Not a word. That, at least, was a relief. Honestly, as long as she didn't talk, didn't try to make me remember, I didn't find her company unbearable. The car moved smoothly through the rain. I leaned back against the seat, listening to the steady rhythm of raindrops on the window. Strangely enough, it calmed me. When we reached my stop, I pulled out my wallet, took out $100, and handed it over. Thanks for the ride. Keep the change. She actually accepted it with a cheerful grin, tucking the bill away as she teased. It was my pleasure, sir. Feel free to contact me anytime you need transportation. I couldn't be bothered to respond. I was about to open the door and leave when she called out again. Makoto wants your contact information. Is that okay? The moment I heard that name, my stomach tightened. Images flashed in my head. That day I secretly added him on WeChat, but that account had long been deleted, so there was nothing to worry about. I nodded slightly, though a faint ripple stirred inside me. Soon, a friend request came through. I glanced at the name, Makoto. The profile looked normal enough. I accepted, and the second I did, the text, "The other party is typing," appeared under his name. I stayed where I was, staring at those gray words for a few seconds. What did he want? Was he coming to accuse me of something, to reopen old wounds? Just as the thought crossed my mind, his message appeared. "George, are you free tomorrow? I'd like to meet and talk." That was it. One simple line, but I didn't know how to reply. Makoto, he'd always been a strange contradiction for me. He wasn't a bad guy. In fact, in some ways, he fit Willow's ideal type better than I ever did. I used to envy him, hell, maybe even resent him. But between us, there had never really been any open conflict. And now, the only thing that once linked us, Willow, had been cleanly cut from my life. Logically, I should have declined his request, kept things simple, but somehow, I wanted to go. I wanted to know what he wanted to say. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something else, something I couldn't quite name. So I typed a single word, "Okay," then added a question mark, asking for the time and place. A few minutes later, he sent back the details. "Tomorrow, 3 p.m. I stared at the screen for a long moment. For some reason, it felt like I was stepping into a new chapter, a different kind of story. And for once, I didn't feel afraid. Chapter 24. The moment I saw Makoto at the cafe, a strange sense of disorientation washed over me. It had only been a month since we last met, but he looked worn down. The shadows beneath his eyes were deep, his face pale, his entire presence dimmed. I hadn't expected that. He used to be the bright one, clean-cut, radiant, like the golden boy everyone naturally gravitated toward. But now he looked like someone whose light had been quietly snuffed out. Still, I straightened up and greeted him politely. "Long time no see." When we ordered, the air between us felt as awkward as ever. We weren't friends, not really, and sitting across from him now, the silence felt heavier than it should have. I could only stare out the window, watching raindrops slide down the glass. In the end, it was Makoto who broke the silence. "George, I asked you out today because I wanted to apologize." "I'm sorry." I blinked, turning to look at him. His expression was serious, almost nervous. I waved my hand quickly, trying to ease the tension. "There's nothing to apologize for between us, really." And it was true, there wasn't. If anyone owed anyone an apology, it certainly wasn't him. But hearing me say that only seemed to deepen the guilt in his eyes. "That day, I didn't know you and Willow were married. I said a lot of things I shouldn't have. I might have hurt you. I really am sorry." Only then did I realize he was talking about the day at the law firm. He'd said quite a bit in front of me, congratulating the happy couple, talking about how Willow had always been emotionally pure, how she deserved someone who truly loved her. Yeah, I'd been uncomfortable that day, sure, but I didn't hold it against him. I smiled faintly, trying to keep things light. "It's fine. I was the one who didn't make things clear. I kept it from you first. You were just saying what anyone in your position would have said. I don't take it personally." I paused for a second, then added, half jokingly, "Honestly, what you said that day kind of helped me. It made me more certain about ending things. So really, you should be glad I finally moved on." I meant it, every word. But he dropped his gaze, eyes reddening slightly. "For things to turn out this way, Willow and I both share the blame. We wronged you." I opened my mouth, wanting to say it's not your fault, but the words got stuck in my throat. I didn't know how to comfort him, not when his guilt was so raw, so real. "George," he continued, voice trembling a little, "I also wanted to tell you. Willow and I have cleared things up. From now on, we're just siblings." "But could you?" He hesitated, then looked straight at me. "Could you give her another chance?" That stopped me cold. I'd expected him to bring up almost anything else, except that. Of all people, I never imagined he would be the one asking me to get back with her. And what shocked me even more, I'd always assumed they were already together. On the day of my divorce, I had mentally prepared myself for that outcome, for them to get married eventually, maybe even soon. But instead, here he was, urging me to reconcile with her. "I'm already divorced from her," I said, unable to hide my confusion. "Why didn't you two end up together?" He lowered his head, silent for a long moment. before finally speaking in a subdued tone. He told me he'd known for years that Willow liked him, but he'd pretended not to know. Then, after his own marriage failed and left him broken, it was Willow who had helped him through those dark months. At the time, he thought she still liked him, and slowly, inevitably, he started to fall for her too. But as they spent more time together, he began to notice something, a change, subtle but undeniable. The way she looked at him had shifted. There was no longer that old glimmer in her eyes. She looked at me, he said softly, voice almost cracking, like an older sister looks at her younger brother. He paused, took a deep breath. Later, I realized I was no longer the special one in her heart. He explained that the day he spoke to me, he genuinely didn't understand what Willow was thinking anymore. He'd hoped talking to me might give him some clarity. But once I learned the truth about your divorce, he said, I finally understood. I was the one who disrupted her life. During that time, she was like someone possessed, searching for you everywhere. And in her eyes, I saw the same light she once had when she looked at me. He drew a shaky breath, his voice barely above a whisper. That's when I knew she really didn't love me anymore. She had moved on. She had a new life, with you, with your home. She just never managed to say it out loud. I feel so guilty. He buried his face in his hands, his words spilling out like confession after confession. I sat there, listening to every word, and for once, I had nothing to say. Chapter 25. By the time Makoto finished speaking, it felt as though a great stone had dropped into my chest, sending waves crashing through everything I thought I understood. I hadn't expected his side of the story to sound so completely different. I was shocked, yes, but not entirely convinced. Because love is like water you drink yourself. Only you know whether it's warm or cold. If Willow truly loved me, could I really have gone 3 years without sensing it at all? So, faced with Makoto's sincere explanations and gentle persuasion, I stayed silent for a moment before answering. No matter whether her feelings for you were love, affection, or friendship, I said calmly, to me, they were always deeper than whatever she felt for me, her husband. The reason I wanted a divorce wasn't only because of you. It was everything, all the small disappointments, the quiet hurts, the years of pretending, that finally made me see what marriage really was. That's when I lost all hope. I stated it as plainly as I could, and Makoto seemed to understand. Whatever words he had left to say died on his lips. Our eyes met across the table. I saw the faint redness around his eyes and couldn't help but sigh. In the end, I said softly, this whole thing is between Willow and me. You're innocent in it. You shouldn't have been dragged in from the start. What's done is done. The divorce is final. If I, the one living it, can move on and let go, then what's left for you to dwell on? Let it all go. Makoto, live your own life. It's not too late for either of us to start again. Chapter 26. Though the conversation had ended, Makoto couldn't calm himself for a long time. He sat there alone, staring into his untouched coffee, replaying every word in his head until at last he began to understand what George had really meant. Yesterday's things die with yesterday. Today's things are born anew with today. In that instant, all the dark clouds that had gathered in his mind slowly dispersed. He stood up, crossed to the private room next door, and gently pushed the door open. The room was silent. Willow sat leaning back in her chair, saying nothing. Makoto called to her softly, Willow, are you okay? Every word of the conversation between him and George had reached her ears. She wasn't okay, but in front of him, she hid it well, forcing herself to sound steady. I'm fine. There was a faint tremor in her voice, and Makoto noticed it immediately. He lowered his gaze and sat across from her, searching for something, anything, comforting to say. I can understand how George feels, he said finally. I don't know what happened between you two these past 3 years, but it must have been hard for him, hard enough that he wanted to end it and start over. Willow, if he's chosen to let go, maybe you should too. It was sound advice, and she knew it. But Willow also knew that the pain and despair George had endured during their marriage, all of it had come from her. She was the one who'd driven it to this ending. What right did she have to talk about letting go? No amount of comfort could touch her now. She didn't want Makoto to worry about her either. So she steered the conversation away, insisting on driving him home. As they parted, he asked one last question. Willow, can you let George go? Could she? No, Willow thought. A sad smile touched her lips, but there was a quiet strength in her voice. He chased me for 10 years, she said, and even though I married him, I never truly treated him the way he deserved. Losing him, that's the punishment I earned. After 3 years as husband and wife, he's become a part of my life I can't erase. How could I just let go? Whether he hates me or resents me, I still want to try again, whatever the outcome. I'll follow my heart. Makoto didn't try to dissuade her. He simply lifted his hand and waved, a small but genuine smile on his lips. Willow, he said softly, thank you for everything over the years, and I hope that in the end, you get what you truly wish for. Chapter 27. After saying goodbye to all my friends one by one, I finally slung my luggage over my shoulder, ready to set off again, to finish the journey around the world that I should have completed long ago. David drove me to the airport, nagging the whole way like an overprotective father. Remember to be careful wherever you go. If anything happens, call me, and if you find good food, fun places, or beautiful sights, take pictures and send them to me. Okay. Oh, and if you ever get tired and can't find a place to stay, just come back. You still remember the code to my door lock, right? Dragging my suitcase beside him, I couldn't help but laugh. I'm going on a trip, not running away from the law. Can you not make it sound like we're saying our final goodbyes? That one line almost ruined the whole mood. David rolled his eyes so hard I thought they'd pop out, then reached over and pinched my cheek. You heartless bastard. Last time you disappeared for days without replying to a single message, I was about 2 minutes away from filing a missing person report. I told you I replied in my mind. I said with mock sincerity. Didn't you get it? I believe your ass. And just like that, we bickered all the way to the gate, neither of us willing to lose. It wasn't until boarding was called that we finally, and reluctantly, parted ways. Not long after passing security, while I was still searching for my seat on the plane, my phone buzzed. A message from David. I just saw someone, looks exactly like Willow. My heart skipped a beat. I whipped my head around, scanning the boarding crowd, but didn't see her. After a few seconds, I exhaled in relief and typed back. You must have seen wrong. His reply came almost instantly, sharp, certain, urgent. It's definitely her. Be careful. A faint unease began to creep up my spine. I hadn't told anyone about this trip, not even the destination. So how could she possibly know? To be sure, I messaged Mao, my lawyer. Willow handed in her resignation the day before yesterday. I don't know where she went. The moment I read that reply, my body tensed. She'd quit her job. Then the person David saw, could it really have been her? I was still trying to figure out if I'd somehow leaked my travel plans when a voice, one I knew all too well, suddenly sounded from behind me. Excuse me, sir, could you please move aside? I froze. Slowly, I turned around, and there she was, Willow, standing right behind me, smiling as innocently as ever, her eyes shining with that maddening, deliberate brightness. George, what a coincidence, she said sweetly. I didn't bother playing along. I frowned, my tone sharp. Why are you on this flight? Business trip, she said, completely straight-faced. I gave a short, humorless laugh. Oh really? You're that dedicated to your company after you just quit? Her expression didn't falter. In fact, she looked pleased. You actually know about my resignation. George, you do care about me. I was speechless. I turned my head away and went straight back to my seat. A few seconds later, she followed, and sat down right beside me. She waved her boarding pass with a smug little grin. We're seat neighbors, apparently. I took a deep breath through my nose, forcing my voice steady. You're stalking me, aren't you, Attorney Liu? That's a crime. She blinked innocently. Please show me your evidence. Otherwise it's defamation. Mr. Wang. Of course, I had no evidence, so I switched tactics. We're divorced, I said coldly. Would it kill you to just live your own life and let me live mine? Why can't you stop following me? Her head dipped slightly, her voice softer now, but her tone carried that same subtle pull I'd come to dread. You promised me we'd have a proper talk, but you left again without saying anything. I was afraid this time you'd really disappear. My chest tightened, not from guilt, but from the familiar, weary mix of frustration and helplessness she always managed to stir. This woman was a master at getting under my skin, using that gentle, patient tone that sounded like care, but always came with strings attached. But now that she'd tracked me down even on a plane, there was nowhere left to run. I sighed, turned toward her, and said evenly, fine, you wanted to talk. Let's talk now. I'm all ears. Chapter 28. Did you decide to divorce me because of that photo album? She finally asked the question I'd known was coming. I wasn't surprised, and I didn't plan to lie. Yes, and no. I leaned back in my seat, my voice steady. That thought had been there for a long time. The album just lit the fuse. Even if I hadn't seen it that day, it was only a matter of time before I couldn't take it anymore. It was the truth. That suffocating state we were living in, it had gone on far too long. The explosion was inevitable. She didn't respond. I glanced sideways and saw her head slightly bowed, guilt flickering in her eyes. I didn't do well enough, she murmured. If you had so many complaints about me, why didn't you tell me earlier? A soft, humorless laugh escaped me. My eyes drifted toward the window, the tone of my voice cooling. You liked Makoto once, didn't you? And you never told me either. I just followed your example and chose silence. The words hit her hard. I saw it in the way her shoulders tensed, her breath catching as she scrambled to explain. I did like him. Yes, but that was a long time ago. After we got married, I really tried to move on, to make things work with you. I turned my head and looked at her face, flustered, desperate, but I couldn't bring myself to care anymore. Whether you were sincere or not, It doesn't matter, I said slowly, each word sharp and deliberate. What's past is past. I just want to make peace with it, and stop wasting energy on things that aren't worth it. Do you understand? Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she stayed quiet. I withdrew my gaze, closed my eyes, slipped on my headphones and eye mask, and let myself drift. My mind was startlingly calm, empty, almost peaceful. As the plane cut through the clouds, I could feel her gaze on me from time to time, heavy and searching, but I didn't open my eyes. Whatever she wanted to say, whatever I didn't want to hear, belonged to the past now. 2 hours later, we landed at J City Airport. I pulled my suitcase toward the taxi stand, and just as I was about to step into line, I caught sight of her again in the corner of my eye. Of course, like a shadow that refused to fade. Why are you still following me? I turned, voice laced with irritation. I've said everything I needed to say. Are you really going to keep chasing me like this? She didn't flinch. Instead, she spoke slowly, deliberately. We've only talked about the 3 years of our marriage, she said. But the 7 years before that, and the rest of our lives after, we haven't talked about those yet, have we? I let out a short, cold laugh. What's there to talk about? I liked you for 7 years, then we went our separate ways. That's the whole story. She lifted her head, her eyes calm but burning with a strange intensity. That look, it pulled me backward in time. Back to that night outside the university library, the first time I confessed my feelings. I'd been standing there, face burning, blocking her path with all the courage I could muster. She had only smiled and said, "Thank you." That single word had doused every bit of fire in me. I'd turned to leave, embarrassed and defeated, but then she had laughed softly. Back then, I'd thought she was laughing at me. "It's okay if you don't like me now," I'd said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "The future is unpredictable. Miss Liu, don't make up your mind so soon." How naive I'd been, foolish, but stubborn to the bone. And now, a decade later, she threw the same line back at me. "The future is unpredictable, George," she said gently. "Don't be so quick to make up your mind." For a moment, I froze. 10 years of memories came rushing back all at once. Time, it seemed, had drawn a perfect circle, bringing us right back to where it all began. Only this time, the roles were reversed. The one doing the chasing had changed. The feelings that came too late were finally spoken aloud. But I was no longer that boy who blushed under the streetlight, waiting for her answer. I lowered my head, avoiding her gaze, yet I couldn't stop the faint tremor in my chest. That quiet ripple of emotion I thought had long died, slowly, quietly returning. Chapter 29. October in J City finally brought a hint of coolness to the air. Dragging my suitcase into the hotel lobby, I glanced down at the confirmation message on my phone, wondering if this trip could still return to the quiet I'd originally hoped for. Then I looked up, and there she was again, Willow. At this point, after so many coincidental encounters, even the most gullible person wouldn't believe it was by chance. "In a city this big, with this many hotels," I said, my tone clipped and sharp, "don't tell me this is another coincidence." She, of course, was perfectly calm, as if stalking an ex-husband across provinces were the most natural thing in the world. Her lips curved into a serene smile. "Coincidences can be heaven's will or human intent," she said. "Maybe meeting you again is just my good luck, George." I almost laughed. Not from humor, from disbelief. I rubbed my temples, forcing myself to stay calm. "If fate was really on our side," I said flatly, "we wouldn't have ended up divorced." "Don't use destiny as an excuse, Willow." She tilted her head slightly, that familiar spark of amusement lighting her face. "Or maybe," she said softly, "our real story begins after the divorce." A humorless chuckle escaped me. "Funny, I'd say the moment we signed those papers, fate cut its losses. Everything after that, just bad karma." She actually nodded. "And what's so wrong with bad karma? 7 years ago, didn't you create accidental meetings over and over until I remembered you? Now it's just my turn. Think of it as balance." Her voice was light, casual, but every word managed to hit right where it hurt. "Is digging up the past your only skill?" I asked through gritted teeth. She smiled, all too pleased with herself. "No, I'm also good at creating coincidences." I couldn't help it. I actually laughed. "What did I ever do to deserve being haunted by you?" Then her eyes changed. The teasing faded, replaced by something quieter, deeper. Her voice softened, but the words struck clean through my chest. "Your mistake," she said, "was that 10 years ago, you shouldn't have provoked me." My breath caught, and damn it, I almost agreed. Maybe she was right. Maybe from that very first look, we'd both taken a step we never should have. "So what will it take for you to let me go?" I asked finally, half in surrender, half in exhaustion. I just wanted this endless tug of war to end. "I'm not chasing you," she said calmly, her tone infuriatingly composed. "I'm just following fate." That did it. I'd had enough. "Fine," I said, spreading my hands. "Since you love talking about fate so much, let's put it to the test. Let's bet on your so-called destiny." Her brows lifted slightly. Bet on what? I checked the time. No phones. We each take 100 yuan in cash. There are 2 buses outside, one going east, one west. We get on different ones. If you find me before midnight, you win. Her eyes lit up, like a kid who'd just been handed the rules to her favorite game. And what's the reward if I win? I smiled faintly. I'd been waiting for that question. The loser grants the winner one request, I said. Anything they want, but they have to keep their word. Without hesitation, she nodded. If I win, you have to give me a chance to chase you again. For a brief second, I actually felt relieved. At least she hadn't said remarry, but that relief didn't last long. Looking at her calm, determined face, something in me twisted uneasily. You sound awfully confident. You really think you can pull this off? She didn't answer. Instead, she handed me her phone, her gaze locked on mine. Aren't you going to ask what I'll make you do if you lose? I asked. I don't need to know, she said, turning toward the door with a wave. Because I'm going to win. And with that, she walked away, cool, sure-footed, maddeningly certain. Where did she even get that kind of confidence? I glanced at the clock again. J City's last bus ran at 9. If she could really find me before midnight, then maybe, just maybe, fate wasn't done with us after all. I chose the northern route. The bus looped through several districts before ending at a deserted terminal. There wasn't much around, just a flickering street lamp, a row of vending machines, and the low hum of insects in the cool October air. I wandered into a 24-hour convenience store, bought a bottle of water, and sat in the corner, watching the clock tick. At first, I thought I could wait it out. 2 hours, maybe 3. She wouldn't find me here. She couldn't. But as time crawled past 10, then 10:30, a faint unease began to grow in my chest. By 11, I couldn't sit still anymore. I told myself it was pointless, that this was just another one of her games. Yet before I knew it, I was outside, flagging down a taxi back to the hotel. When I reached the lobby, it was 11:40. The room key in my pocket read 15:08, but somehow, I couldn't bring myself to go upstairs right away. I lingered near the elevator, counting the seconds. 11:45, 11:47, 11:50. Finally, I pressed the button. The ride up to the 15th floor felt longer than it should have. The hallway was dim, lined with soft yellow lights that barely touched the corners. When I reached the door, I slipped the card from my pocket, and that's when I heard it. The faintest sound of fabric brushing against the wall. I turned, and there she was, Willow, standing by the door, quiet, still, as if she'd been waiting there all along. For a moment, I froze. Not because she was there, but because of how she was there. Her eyes were calm, not triumphant, not teasing, just steady, peaceful, certain. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. It was as though she'd known this moment would come, no matter which bus I took, no matter how far I went. And looking at her, I suddenly remembered another night, 10 years ago, outside the university library. Back then, I was the one waiting, the one who refused to leave, hoping she'd turn around. And now, the roles were reversed. Now she was the one waiting in silence, while I stood there, unable to move. I didn't know if that made her the winner of our little bet, but what I did know, and couldn't deny, was that somewhere deep inside, despite everything, my heart had begun to waver again.